Welcome back to Vikes with the Mike. As always, it's your host, JC Goosen, here with my friend, my pal, my co-host, Tyler Williams. Tyler, it's official, man. Kevin O'Connell is the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. Signed, sealed, delivered. He's ours. And I am very intrigued.
I like that word.
Intrigued. Yeah. I'm more intrigued after his press conference than I was beforehand.
Right.
Going into this, I really was not the biggest fan of this hiring. But I'm finally, that's going to be the last time I mention it. I'm putting it behind me. I'm getting excited now. This is my staff. And that's the big news. Basically, all of Kevin O'Connell's staff is set here for the Minnesota Vikings. But before we get into that, because the last time we recorded, it was the day after the whole Jim Harbaugh situation, finding out that night that it was going to be Kevin O'Connell, we jumped the gun. We recorded an episode. We were like, hey, Vikings have their coach. And that was well before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And he was able to actually sign on that dotted line. So hasn't not really been much news. Obviously, there wasn't any news leading up to the Super Bowl because he couldn't talk about it. The team couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Has been news that has developed after that. But what were your thoughts, man, after I assume listening to the press conference?
I absolutely love the press conference. He was very appreciative of the Vikings, of them giving him this chance to come coach this team and him wanting to shift the culture of the team. He was very...
That's a word that was mentioned a lot, wasn't it?
Culture. Yeah, culture. I love that. That's what the Vikings needed. There was really no culture with this team. The open relationships were completely destroyed by the Vikings in the past 5 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think that, when it comes to the culture specifically too, that Kevin O'Connell is going to try and implement, you can tell that he really believes in it, right? That he is just as enthralled
on the plate.
He's just as enthralled in his culture as he wants his players to be.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's something, that him and Kwesi probably immediately connect.
One thing I really...
Oh, sorry. Looks like you're kind of cutting out there, Tyler. Just 1 second. Maybe get your sound back here. You there? There you go. Go for it.
There we go. Oh, one thing I really respect about him was his responses to the questions were very good, especially like the cryptic ones about Kirk Cousins and the fact that, are you going to be calling plays next year? He was really opening. His responses were really good in regards to that.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to talk football. He wasn't afraid to be honest and upfront about his football philosophy. He had that energy about him.
The energy, yeah, I loved it.
And I mean, that's one of the coolest things about this whole situation, right? Is you got a guy, Kevin O'Connell, 36 years old, and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, 40 years old. That is a complete 180 from what he's had in Minnesota. So it's definitely something you can tell. You talked briefly about the gratitude that he expressed to the Vikings about getting this opportunity. It's yeah, man, you can tell. He understands that he is young and in a major role. But the thing that probably blew me away the most about the press conference wasn't necessarily the culture, as cool as that is, and as much as I love that. And I think there's going to obviously be a ton of success that stems from that. When you talk about culture, it makes me think obviously PJ Fleck. That's the guy that I go to. It's very reminiscent of that. But the thing that impressed me the most was how deliberate he was about making sure people understood that he was going to delegate, and that is how winning teams operate. That he is the head football coach, yes, but his entire staff is, has power to a certain degree, and he's going to trust them and lean on them, especially having, coming from a position where Sean McVay was so heavily leaning on him. He's going to lean on his coaching staff to do the same exact thing, to put him and this team in a position to win every Sunday. And actually not just every Sunday, right? You talk about win the day. right? Like win
Yep.
every practice, win every meeting, all that kind of stuff. So absolutely love that you mentioned culture, because I think that goes into it for sure.
I also really love how he wants to implement a lot of the Rams philosophy of thinking and all what that team wants to do. A team that just won the Super Bowl, obviously, but you could tell that team has a boatload of talent. The culture they had in LA was phenomenal, and he was a big part of it. Yes, he probably didn't call the plays, but he helped design the offense for Sean McVay. He was his right-hand man, and he got to experience a lot of what Sean McVay did. And McVay's been very successful as a head coach and leading this Rams team into the promised land. I mean, they've been a very consistent team. They made the playoffs, what was the last 3-4 years? They finally got it done this year.
Yeah.
They've been good for the last. They've been solid since McVay's gotten there. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so. And I mean, they had that win now mentality. I'm not 100% sure if I would be down with the Vikings doing the exact same thing. I mean, if I got us a Super Bowl, then that'd be amazing. But I just the trades specifically that they pulled. I
don't think the Vikings roster is as complete as LA's.
No, but the way that LA got there was trading away all their draft capital, right? To get current stuff.
It was basically all their first round capital. It was basically all their first round capital. Yeah.
So, and that's whatever. That's for the Rams podcast to talk about.
Yeah.
But it'll definitely be interesting to see just what Kevin O'Connell pulls. Obviously, it's going to be a large portion, but what he maybe chooses to leave in LA and what he chooses to bring.
Yep.
So, with that, let's get into this coaching staff. So at least break this thing down to the best of our abilities. We're going to mention every name that has been confirmed. Only really going to touch, though, on guys that we really feel need to be touched on or that we have something to say. But and then after that, I kind of want to circle back to Kevin O'Connell at the end here and really talk about the issue that I had with him and how my eyes have been opened on that. And that's kind of how we'll finish this whole thing up. But Kevin O'Connell, head coach, assistant head coach of your Minnesota Vikings is Mike Pettin. I am very hesitant to like this hire. I think that it's good that Kevin has somebody that, like I was just saying, he can delegate, he can lean on, who has been in this position before, has been in many different, very high-ranking positions on many different coaching staffs. I think that's going to be huge for him to have. But I am a little worried about certain decisions that, he may delegate off to Mike. I don't know. I mean, how do you really feel about?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same ballpark as you with this one, man. Mike Pettin's a guy who has a lot of experience. I mean, he's been coaching in the NFL since 2002, but it's
20 years of coaching experience in the NFL.
The thing that stings me, though, is his stint with Green Bay as a defensive coordinator in 2018 through 20. That defense in Green Bay, those 2 to 3 years, were absolutely atrocious, and that's putting it lightly.
And how about having the title of head coach underneath the Cleveland Browns at any point, before Stefanski came into that play?
He got 7 wins with them for 1 year, but it's that's still not. I mean, it is the Browns, but it's come on.
It's and I mean, you got to take a head coaching position, right? But still, it's just it's tough to be
I'm not gonna say that Pettin's this isn't the worst possible hire, but it's nothing special the Vikings did with this hire. I'm gonna be completely honest. There's nothing special about it. He's a guy with experience, yes, that's good, but is Mike Pettin gonna be a guy that's gonna help this team get to the Super Bowl? I don't think so. I just don't.
I mean, the one thing that I do like about this hire that I will say that I want to draw attention to, as far as I think this is specifically smart for Kevin O'Connell. I don't know if this necessarily works for any other coach, but it's specifically smart for Kevin O'Connell because he's adamant about wanting to be like the play call, right?
Yep.
And it's obvious that Kevin O'Connell's an offensive minded guy. And he's going, he's going to care about all three phases of the football. He made that very clear in his press conference too. But hiring an assistant head coach that is a majority defensively aligned, or completely defensively aligned, really, aside from his head coaching stint and a consultant stint in Seattle.
Yep.
Like, hiring a person like that as your assistant head coach is probably going to be really, really helpful for O'Connell to be able to, like, especially if he has a good enough relationship with Pettin to, give him this high of a position on his staff. He obviously feels good about the way that Mike can digest what O'Connell wants to do on the defensive side of the ball and apply it. He must have pretty strong confidence in that.
He's got to have a little bit of confidence in him. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, yeah, I think that it'll be beneficial to O'Connell. I'm not sure if it would necessarily be beneficial to, 70% of the head coaches in the league to have Mike Pettin on your team as an assistant head coach. But I have to believe that Kevin O'Connell knows what he's doing by assigning, him this role. And it makes it even easier. We'll kind of jump over to defensive coordinator real quick. That Ed Donatel is your defensive coordinator, because this dude is somebody that I am stupid excited for. I mean, if you can't get Vic Fangio, this is the guy you want.
Right.
I mean, like, he basically is.
It's Fangio's right-hand man. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the dude, oh, God, what he was able to do over there in Denver since 2015. I mean, he's a defensive backs guy too, which I really like, because
work with the Packers in 2003 and Falcons, I think, in 2004. Yeah,
and the Niners. That's
right.
Niners back in 11-14.
He's got a lot of experience with defense, which I really like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's
especially if he's going to be the DC, but
right. Well, I mean, he's completely defensive. But the great thing about this is the amount of experience that he has too. The 31 years in the NFL. So you got a guy in Pettin who's got 20 years. You got a guy in Donatel who's got 31 years. Like, that's a really solid two heads of your defensive side of the ball, which is, let's be honest, the side that's probably going to need the most tinkering when it comes to this next season. You're going to need more youth and more electricity on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball, if anything, if we really want to get back to some winning ways. So absolutely in love with that hire. I really can't praise it enough. I am extremely excited. And he's going to switch probably to a 3-4.
Right. That's what I wanted to ask you about, because he ran the 3-4 in Denver, but then apparently his other years he was with a 4-3, but most recently, a 3-4. So I would assume he goes to a 3-4, like you said, which is interesting, which is very interesting.
I think that he'll stick with a 3-4, and I believe that O'Connell was even asked in his introductory press conference about this, and he said something along the lines of, yes, I, plan, or to an extent, 3-4 is kind of in the works, but due to the fact that 11 personnel, if you look at the numbers just this last season, offenses were running 11 personnel, which means 3 wide receivers, tight end, and running back. About 60% of the time on the dot, I think it was like 61. But the fact that they're running that formation that much across the NFL means that a majority of the time you're kind of seeing hybrid nickels anyways, which is, I mean, now we're really getting into X's and O's, but at that point it's like, really, how can you mix up coverages and blitz?
Yep.
Right. So it's very rare that you're going to be in a perfect situation where you're going to get this like beautiful base 3-4, and that's going to work super well as far as like stopping the run, unless you're facing maybe a Mike Zimmer.
Well, that's all freaking Zim would do, the nickel double A gap on third down every time.
Right. So yeah,
Oh, God.
I think it's super awesome. I think it's very interesting with bringing Ed Donatel in this whole 3-4 conversation that O'Connell brought up Anthony Barr specifically in his press conference.
Yep.
I made a point to mention this earlier, but it's super intriguing because we've always talked about what Barr would look like as a pass rushing outside linebacker. And I do think that they might try to get something in the works here is extending him again. And I'm not necessarily against that, so long as the cap, works.
Yeah, it really all comes down to the money with Barr. I mean, and whether he can actually stay on the field next year.
Exactly. And I'm 100% sure that we'll have more conversations about this.
Yep.
But yeah, the Ed Donatel hire, again, could not be more excited about the way this is looking.
W.
Yeah, absolutely. Then if we switch over to the offensive side of the ball, just recently it was officially announced, I believe it was yesterday or the day before.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, Wes Phillips, the former tight ends coach of the Los Angeles Rams, has been hired as the now offensive coordinator under Kevin O'Connell for the Minnesota Vikings. Wes Phillips, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he's the son of Wade Phillips, obviously legendary coach, and then Wade Phillips is also the son of Bum Phillips. So there's a lot of
football.
History.
Yeah, this guy's got a lot of football's
in their blood. I'm a little worried about. I mean, like you can't really call it nepotism necessarily because
it's not a Zimmer, it's a Phillips kind of thing.
Wade isn't on the team, so it's not nepotism, but it is interesting the way that.
It's so nice. It's so nice not saying no nepotism on this Viking staff right now. Oh my God, it's refreshing.
Yes, absolutely. It's good to see that the Zimmer's gone. But yeah. Anyways. Wes Phillips, I quite honestly, I don't have a lot to get into when it comes to Wes Phillips. I don't think that there is a crap ton to get into here because of how hands-on I assume Kevin O'Connell is going to be, and the fact that, again, he said that he's going to be calling the plays. I wouldn't be shocked if he puts Wes Phillips in a similar role as to what
he was doing.
He was in LA.
Yeah.
Which we kind of went into, I think, the last episode that we recorded when it was, just coming out that we were going to be hiring him. But again, once we get through this, I'm going to circle back to that because I do want to highlight exactly what it was that Kevin O'Connell was doing in LA. So stay tuned, and that'll probably link up with Wes Phillips. Do you have anything about him?
Yeah, my one thing with Wes is, he played quarterback obviously in college at UTEP, but my interesting thing was he was the tight ends coach, I think, in Washington. I think he worked with the tight ends in LA as well. He developed two really good tight ends. Tyler Higbee's turned into a pretty solid NFL tight end. And then he also worked with Jordan Reed. I think maybe getting Irv Smith next year when he's back healthy, working with Irv next year is going to be phenomenal. Get him back on track to where he was before the injury. I think that's going to be key for the Vikings, getting him involved a lot next year.
Yeah, it'll be really cool to have a guy like Phillips, who has been working with tight ends for this long, to get a weapon like that. If the tight end becomes a staple part of this offense, Irv Smith is the type of guy that you want. Hey, maybe we can, maybe he can get in O'Connell's ear or Kwesi's ear too about trying to get Conklin on a nice deal or something like that.
Right. I would love that, especially for blocking purposes. Yeah. You're going to need him in tight personnel.
Oh, 100%. But yeah, man, Darren Waller type stuff out of Irv Smith, I think next year.
I'm hoping, man. Bounce back year, comeback player of the year, maybe next year, people.
Oh, maybe.
We'll see.
But yeah, that's really all about Wes Phillips, at least for now.
Yeah.
And then the last coordinator position that we got here is Matt Daniels as a special teams coordinator, and yet again, he's a newly announced hire It was announced yesterday, I believe, as well. He's coming over from Dallas. He's only been coaching since 2018. So there's really not much to say.
Was he an
Matt
assistant?
Daniels.
Was he in the assistant special teams at Dallas?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, like, they had a really solid special teams unit over there as far as return yards.
They do.
Dallas is Zerline.
I mean, to be honest, Dallas is a really good team on paper. They're coached well besides their head coach. I'm going to be honest with you. I think a lot of their other coaches, like Dan Quinn, did a phenomenal job with the defense. I just think Mike McCarthy is he's not good at being a head coach. I'm going to be honest.
Well, they obviously think he's good enough to retain him. So,
we'll
see how that goes.
Jerry said that about Jason Garrett. For that, let him.
Yeah. So, yeah, Matt Daniels, a big, really question mark,
right.
What I find really interesting, quite honestly, about this hire is because right alongside him was hired the assistant special teams coordinator, is Ben Kotlka. And he has a much larger resume than Daniels does. He's been coaching special teams since 2007 with the Jets. He was there until 2013. Then he moved over to Washington until 2018, was with Atlanta this last year, and now he's assistant special teams coach. So he's actually making a regression in his career because he was a special teams coordinator in Atlanta.
Wow.
Well,
so, Atlanta's yikes, but yeah.
Yeah, 47 years old, and he's going to be an assistant to a gentleman who I believe is 32 years old and the youngest coach on this staff.
Wow, 32.
32 years old, and he's a coordinator.
We got dudes. There's guys on this roster that are older than this dude. Wow. Harrison Smith. Good God. Is Harry? I don't know Harry's exact age, but I think he's like 33, 34. I don't know.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. Maybe 32.
Maybe they're the same age. I don't know, but still.
But biggest thing. So those are 5 names that we've mentioned so far, aside from Kevin O'Connell, right? Mike Pettin, Wes Phillips, Ed Doncel, Matt Daniels, Ben Kotlka. 85 years of coaching experience in the NFL combined between those 5 guys underneath Kevin O'Connell. That is massive for a gentleman that's 36 years old who is in his first head coaching spot in the league. Hopefully his last. It would be great to have a freaking lifetime or something, like a Mike Tomlin type situation here.
Oh yeah.
But 85 years. I mean, that's a lot to be able to lean on. That's huge. Absolutely huge to have your main contributors as far as your coordinators that are directly reporting to you have that much experience under their belt. I think that's really going to serve Kevin O'Connell and hopefully kind of get him past that, that newbie, rut that guys get caught in. Then that happens with everything, right? Whenever you take up something new or get a promotion or whatever, you got to get used to it. Hopefully having these guys is really going to help him get past that even faster than the average head coach.
Right.
So, it'll be very, very interesting. Anything else to add about those 5 guys, Tyler?
Not those guys necessarily, but I'm happy Keenan McCardell's back on this staff.
I love that you're jumping right into Keenan.
Yeah.
That's a great place.
I love that. I'm so excited for that. That keeps the morales of JJ and Adam extremely high right now. Those guys got to be thrilled. Yep, even KJ as well. It's just awesome. It's great.
There's no doubt about it. Yes, the Vikings are welcoming back Keenan McCardell as the only positions coach that was a part of the Mike Zimmer coaching staff last year to Minnesota. They're also welcoming back Durante Jones. He went to LSU as their defensive coordinator last year, but had previously been the cornerbacks coach in 2020 under Mike Zimmer and the Minnesota Vikings. Back as DB's coach. So yes, Keenan McCardell stays. I mean, I think have an entire episode, if I remember correctly.
I do.
He was first
We do. An entire one. Yeah.
I mean, like this dude, there's not enough good things that you can say about Keenan Cardell. And it's obvious, just the way that his players talk about him.
Yep.
So absolutely love that Kevin O'Connell immediately heard JJ and Thielen and was like, yes, I'll work something out. We will keep this guy on the roster because that is massive. It's huge. Huge.
Yeah.
Super excited about that. And I mean, we already mentioned Durante Jones. There's really not a ton more to mention about him, if I'm going to be completely honest. But we might as well jump there really quick, just since we already brought him up. Another guy who's got a pretty great resume, has been around the NFL in Cincinnati. Again, he was in Minnesota. He was also in Miami. And as I mentioned, went to LSU as their defensive coordinator, all that good stuff. So been around the block, started out his coaching career in 2001. A guy that lives, breathes, sleeps defensive backs. I mean, when you look at his resume, it's all just secondary corners, defensive backs, all that stuff. So it's pretty awesome. Good to have a guy, especially, again, mentioned earlier with Ed Donatel, good to have a guy who knows what he's doing when it comes to that secondary, because that was a major weakness of the Minnesota Vikings defense this last year. Let's move to QBs. Chris O'Hara coming over from the Rams, and Jared Johnson as his assistant quarterbacks coach. Jared Johnson coming over from the Indianapolis Colts as the offensive quality control coach. O'Hara, offensive assistant last year for LA, started out his NFL career in Jacksonville, moved on to Washington, went back to Jacksonville, all that good stuff. Dude is pretty young. He's 31 years old. So actually, I guess maybe
Johnson's also very young as well. I believe he's 33.
Well, Johnson was a player fairly recently. Still, I think he retired. Yeah, 2018 looks like.
Wow.
Retired from the league. So yeah, pretty insane. Two very young guys that have been around some pretty solid quarterbacks. I'm excited to see specifically what these two bring as far as Chris O'Hara coming from LA and how they were able to open up the playbook for Stafford and really kind of tailor what Stafford was able to do well in that offense. Maybe how they end up doing that with Kirk Cousins, but we'll see how that goes.
I like that because I think Stafford and Cousins are both very similar quarterbacks. Both can operate under the play action pass extremely well. So, and that's what LA did a lot last year, So 100%. I like it a lot.
And I mean, like those two with the quarterback stuff is it's also super interesting that those guys get hired in those positions because, you talk about how really everything on the offensive side of the ball, the offensive coordinator, how Wes Phillips, like, wow, Kevin O'Connell must trust him a lot since he's a really offensive-minded guy and he's putting him in the offensive coordinator position. Kevin O'Connell played quarterback in this league. He was a quarterback's coach. The quarterbacks really, when you talk about the offense, you can even narrow it down further. Quarterback is where Kevin O'Connell's mind is at. He sees him as the guy that the entire offense runs through, which obviously it does. But it's like, it's no question. In Kevin O'Connell's mind and his football philosophy, if you don't have an elite quarterback, if you don't have elite quarterback play, you are going nowhere.
Yep.
There's no way in his mind that you can, make up for that. So hiring the two of those guys to look over his future quarterbacks, I think is very interesting. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, so you thought I was really excited about the Ed Donatel hire. Curtis Modkins.
I like this hire a lot as well.
As the running back coach and run game coordinator, my God.
I think this is one of the best hires this team made out of the staff.
This is huge. Absolutely massive how awesome of a hire this is. Okay, out of TCU, has been coaching since 95, right? Has had
a lot of experience.
Yep. Right, absolutely. Has had stints with Kansas City, Arizona, Buffalo, Detroit, San Fran, Chicago, most recently Denver. this dude has coached some guys in Denver. I mean, literally just look at the backs that they had in Denver this last year. Melvin,
Breakout star Javonte Williams.
Javonte Williams. Yes,
right.
Exactly. So, I mean, Jordan Howard was in Chicago with him when he
also worked with Lindsey as well. Lindsey was people don't realize Philip Lindsey was an undrafted free agent signing out of Colorado, and he wasn't like anything. And then when he came to Denver, when he came to freaking Denver, he lit it up that first year. I mean, he's still a good running back, and this guy had a huge part in developing Lindsey into an NFL star. So
this is a guy that he has experience as offensive coordinator in Buffalo and San Francisco, and then running backs coach everywhere else that he's been. In college, he kind of fooled around on the defensive side of the ball for a little bit, some other places, and tight ends and all that good stuff. But in the NFL, this man is offense, and I am so excited. I mean, just some other names that he coached: C.J. Spiller, Reggie Bush. Like, oh man, can you imagine what he's gonna do with Cook and like Matheson and Wangu and just my dude. I'm so excited, and I loved Kennedy Palomalo too. So for us to get Curtis Modkins to take over for a guy that Las Vegas is going to get a great running backs coach in Kennedy Palomalo, he just signed with them today. I mean, like that's huge to be able to fill that spot back up with somebody that you can really trust. I love this hire.
Yeah,
I love it.
I do too. Completely agree.
Tight ends coach, we have Brian Angelicio. I honestly don't know how to pronounce it, if I'm going to be completely honest. But he's pass game coordinator and tight ends coach. What was it, Angelicio?
I said Angelicio, yeah.
Angelicio. Yeah, so I honestly don't have a ton to talk about here. I think maybe you kind of have a little bit more as far as like enjoying his background a bit.
Yeah, he's
worked with
Tampa and Cleveland, Green Bay, Washington, and Carolina are like the last. So he's got experience as a coach. He's
for sure.
And I like that. I like guys with experience, but I also like the young factor as well. I don't know his exact age,
49. But he's 49.
Yeah, you have guys that are in their low 30s on the staff, but 49 is not old. He's worked with a lot of different tight ends, worked with a lot of different people. Yeah, he's been around the block. And you need that on this staff. You need guys who've been around the block on this staff, or else it's not going to work. So, he overlapped with Kevin in Washington. So, that's how.
Yeah, tight ends coach in 2019, I think, right, in Washington when he was the
2019
coordinator, O'Connell there, and then Carolina is where he's coming from, where he spent the last 2 years. Kind of interesting. If you haven't already, maybe check out some PFF headlines that have come out within the past 24 hours linking Carolina and Minnesota. That's where I'm going to leave that. But, might be able to whisper a little something about Sam Darnold or whatever in Kevin O'Connell's ear. We'll see.
You.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Chris Cooper out of Denver. I am excited about him taking over the offensive line, man. Assistant offensive line coach over in Denver. Before that, he was in Miami. Dude, this Denver offensive line with him, and then I believe he's also
he worked with Mike Munchak, I believe, and I wanted Munchak to be the offensive freaking line coach for this team, but he was basically a right hand man to Munchak. So it's
so it's
similar situation with Vic Fangio and Ed Donatel, but yeah.
Him and Justin Riscotti are coming over from Denver, and those two took a lot off of Munchak. When they were there in Denver, and the offensive line grades that Denver has produced overall have been pretty solid, at least more solid than some of the grades that we've been getting here in Minnesota. So if they can transfer any of that over here, I will gladly take it. And at the very least, yet again, you talk about guys that are young, only 39 years old, retired from playing in Denver in 2013. I like these guys that know what the offense looks like in the NFL today. That they are coming out of it fairly recently enough to be like, college offensive linemen already don't transfer well, and they're getting worse and worse as the years go on to the NFL. So I think it's going to be super, super awesome to have both of these guys there in order to specifically look at, drafting new talent and developing new talent.
Right.
Wyatt Davis is probably going to see snaps under these guys. I can
Please. I mean, yeah, he helped develop a lot of those Broncos guys, specifically Quinn Miniers from I forgot what college, Wisconsin. Something was it Whitewater or something? Was it?
Yes, yeah, the belly dude.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Yes,
that was just this past year. Yeah.
All right, we'll kind of go rapid fire here, because there's only two guys left. We got Chris Rumpf taking over defensive line for beloved coach Andre Patterson. Definitely a guy that, you can be excited about. Doesn't have like a ton of NFL experience. He started coaching the NFL just in 2020. He was outside linebackers coach in Houston, and then he moved over to Chicago, which is obviously, where the kind of connection starts to come in with guys like Patton, even Donatel, Fangio, and all those guys. So Chris Rumpf, I mean, like, I'm not saying don't be excited about him, because I'm excited about him. I think most of this defense is really going to run through the guys at the top.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the position guys here are meant to
develop players.
Yeah, exactly.
Develop young guys.
It's right. It's not necessarily so much scheme stuff that these guys are working on, and how each player really fits within that. More so like molding these guys.
Yep.
So
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say Robert Quinn he wasn't young, but it's like Robert Quinn had a freaking breakout year last year somehow with freaking Chicago, 18.5 sacks. I mean, I'm not going to say he did all of that because Robert Quinn's not like a freaking 22-year-old defensive end coming out of the draft, but like, I don't know. I feel like he had some sort of grasp on him getting 18.5 sacks at like however old he is right now.
So, and you bring up a really good point, because I did mean to mention this. He has been mentioned by players. He, as in Chris Rumpf, has been mentioned by players as a really solid defensive line coach. And what's really intriguing about that is there's a certain free agent coming out of Chicago on their defensive line.
Oh, no. Not him.
Like absolute pain in the butt for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, don't bring that guy. Don't bring that guy's name up.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I
exactly
know what you're saying, but it just
it'd be better to have Hicks in purple and gold than fighting against him in.
I don't think he's going back to Chicago. That's the thing.
No, he's not going back to Chicago, but he could go. I don't know. I doubt it, but it's possible. And we'll wrap it up here with Mike Smith, linebackers coach for the Minnesota Vikings, coming over from the division rival Green Bay Packers. Very interesting hire.
Yeah.
I mean, Green Bay has some really solid outside.
They do. I mean, Devondre Campbell last year, freaking Minnesota alum. Shout out to Devondre, man.
Devondre Campbell, yes, absolutely.
I mean, that was
monster year last year.
Monster. I mean, you got Preston's. Those guys play off the edge a lot, but like
Preston and Zadarius Smith. Yeah, I mean, like those. Though that's the type of outside linebacker that you can really get excited about in 3-4 too. You know what I mean? And
exactly. Yeah.
Zadarius Smith, yet another guy that you could potentially see. Depending on how much he loves working with Mike Smith.
Yeah, it depends on
see him in purple and gold. Maybe if you can make the cap work.
Because Green Bay ain't gonna freaking can they afford that?
They don't have the cap space, brother. They don't have the cap space.
Yeah.
But that is the new Minnesota Vikings roster as far as their coaching staff. So super, super exciting. We're gonna now circle back really quick to the Kevin O'Connell deal, right?
Yeah.
And specifically how it kind of ties in with Wes Phillips. So I mentioned it, I believe, in passing this last episode that we recorded about Kevin O'Connell, but he didn't call the plays, right, in LA. And that's why it was this massive deal of, so like he's ready. He thinks he's ready because he said specifically, I'm going to be calling the plays in Minnesota. A lot of people, including myself, we're worried about that, right? Hiring an offensive coordinator that didn't call the plays where he was offensive coordinator. That being said, and I gave the same metaphor in the other podcasts that I recorded, and it's basically, if you think about it like a restaurant, right? Your head coach is the main chef, and Kevin O'Connell, and now for the Minnesota Vikings, Wes Phillips, is like the sous chef. He's delegating that chef to go out and buy the best fresh produce from across the street. Now, the head coach might have a certain idea of what that's going to look like, but he's tasking his offense coordinator, his sous chef, to go out and scout out that fresh produce and bring back the best stuff that he can find from over there. Now, it comes down to the chef to decide what ingredients get used and what gets made. But in a way, the offensive coordinator, Kevin O'Connell at the time in LA, and now hopefully Wes Phillips here in Minnesota, is creating like the outline of the menu, right?
Right.
Kind of this box. And then from there, they're able to create this 3 Michelin star menu, this perfect kind of offense that is tailored to each opponent. So that is the one thing that excites me about Wes Phillips, is that Kevin O'Connell, coming from a guy in that situation, must see similar ideology.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think he has a certain amount of trust in Wes, where he believes in him. He knows he has the football background. They know each other well from LA. I think it's a good situation for the Vikings to have, Absolutely. It's kind of a certain situation that Kevin's taking from LA over to Minnesota, like he said in his introductory press conference. And it worked out clearly fine. I mean, John McVay, man, that Rams offense.
Yeah, crazy. No doubt about that. They're Super Bowl champions, baby. That's all that matters.
I'm salty about it, but I gotta give their team their props,
Oh, it shoot, is what it is. We didn't even get into that. My bad. Oh well. Hey, next year maybe. Who dat? It happens.
Sad, but LA's a good team,
again.
man.
Joey will be there again.
He'll be there again. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, unless you got anything else to add, I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it then for this episode of Vikes with Mike. We will be recording as news happens. It's kind of deal with the off season. There's really not a set recording schedule. It's kind of as the Minnesota Vikings and their new front office and coaching staff dictate us to record. So at the pin drop of newsworthy, record worthy, I should say, news.
Yeah.
We will be there. But until then, look forward to draft coverage coming at you soon. Obviously, once the new league year starts, a whole new season of
free agency, baby. Yeah.
Free agency.
Yeah.
Exciting. Very, very exciting stuff. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the previous episodes. Make sure you check out our website. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We will see you guys next time. And as always, Skol.